like to be another, a different guy and a better lover. For your love, for your life, check your wings. And you like the rock and roller, a different life and whiskey cola. But don't be long, keep your own style and catch your dream. And you like to be another, a different guy and a better lover. For your love, for your life, check your wings. And you like the rock and roller, a different life and whiskey cola. But don't be low, keep your own style and catch your dream.
You just heard Catch Your Train by the Scorpions on their album Virgin Killers from 1976. This is the Requiem Metal Podcast. I'm Mark.
And I'm Jason. And welcome to part 2 of our exploration of the Ulrich John Roth era of the Scorpions, which lasted from their second record, Fly to the Rainbow, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yeah,
sorry. All the way up through Taken by Force, which we'll be talking about very soon here. And before he left and kind of the Scorpions go in a different direction. So hopefully you enjoyed part 1. I was kind of commenting to Mark before we kind of hit record that it's strange how many conversations I have with people, even people that kind of know a good deal about the Scorpions, that they almost have no idea that this era exists. You know, they like begins with like No One But You.
Love at First Thing is the first one they think
or
of. Or
Blackout, you know, like one of those 2 records, and then like their mainstream
Animal
stuff.
Magnetism. I mean, some of those covers I remember seeing as a kid, but I
didn't know what, you know.
Yeah, I just assumed it all sounded the same, because why would it sound any different?
And I probably thought, like, when I was growing up watching MTV, that the Scorpions were as new as, like, Motley Crue or any of the other bands that they seem to be, like, grouped in with, the sort of 80s hair metal stuff.
And they're like a good 10 years older.
I know. And I mean, but I just remember thinking, I thought, like, oh, those guys are just uglier than, like Motley Crue or something.
Whitesnake, it was the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, they got rediscovered and, like, did some of their 70s stuff over
again. I had no
again.
idea that Whitesnake had a whole past before that.
I've got, right behind you in the record shelf, I got all the old Whitesnake, Love Hunter, I love all the old stuff.
Yeah, and, I mean, you know, Mark and I actually recently just saw Deep Purple and Alice Cooper, and, you know, to know that Coverdale was part of that. And, you know, I mean, it was just...
Yeah.
It's just fun, the naivety that you have as a kid. Like, you know, I remember we were talking about Steve Prefontaine one time.
The Runner?
Yeah, the Runner.
Okay.
And we were talking about it to one of the runners I coached, and we kind of revealed that he had died in a car accident. And he said, Steve Prefontaine didn't die until I found out he died. And, like, it was, like, such a simple, profound statement. Like, you don't know what you don't know until you don't know what you don't know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, like...
No, that makes sense. As a kid, if you're open to discovery, and you're not... Because that's, not to get into a bigger political issue, but that's a problem, I think, in our country, is people think what they know is the law, and that's it, and there's nothing else to know.
Yeah. That there's no backstory or back
But as soon as you ask
whatever.
why, or say, I don't know, that opens your world up to an entirely bigger, more rich, fulfilling experience.
Yeah, absolutely. But so it's kind of been nice to go back and hopefully these 2-part episodes have a nice little impact on people that, you know, forces them to kind of go back and buy these records and get deeper in, because we're just kind of hitting you with some highlights. There's definitely other songs we could have played, but, you know, from a greatest hits perspective, you combine the songs from this episode and last episode, I mean, you got that's a pretty solid collection of Scorpion songs without getting to any of their hits, you know, quote unquote hits.
Yeah, because what was it? Probably like the late 90s, early 2000s when we first kind of got exposed to the back catalog of Scorpions.
Yeah, it was when I first started working at New Moon, and the funny thing is it was the Scorpions without Uli. It was Lonesome Crow. Yeah. And it was, you know, with Michael Scheckner before he went on and joined UFO, that, you know, our manager at the record store, Mike Johnson, who we've had on for the Stooges and MC5 show, he was like, you guys are kind of getting into, like, you know, kind of obscure 70s rock and some progressive rock and some of the harder blues rock that, like, Steamhammer and some of those more obscure bands. He goes, you would dig this, you know. And I think that's where Mike stopped. I didn't think he went further with any of the Scorpion stuff because...
Lonesome Crow is my least favorite.
Is it?
Yeah.
I guess I like it...
Out of the early era.
I like it in, like, the way I like Rockarola. I don't know if that, like, that's my only explanation. Like,
because Rockarola to me works as an entire album in a weird way, because you're waiting to hear Rock-a-Rolla, and everything else is like the preamble the the epilogue to it. But
I bet if you went back and listened to Lonesome Crow again and you kind of listen,
there's not like what I want of the Scorpions a lot of the time is the stuff that like Rudolph brings to the band is the sing-songy, the catchy, but also like it was a great counterpoint with Uli. But
there's a couple moments on that record, like I'm Going Mad, which we have like where like Klaus finally like lets off his first like Scorpions like sting. Yeah. And I'm like, that's awesome. And a lot of it's got a krautrock vibe to it, which is kind of cool too. You know, like being like a fan of Can and some of that stuff. You hear that on Lonesome Crow, but that's really the last record you hear a lot of kind of kraut stuff, because from that point on, the Scorpions, as we talked about, point one,
some pretty interesting shit too on that Forever and a Day documentary that came out a couple years ago. They actually have like some old like promo videos or whatever of them from that era, like the krautrocky times. And it's just it's interesting seeing like this really like artfully done video that like shot on like probably 16 millimeter with all these like lens flares, and they're like jumping around and just doing like Beatles-ish,
very much psychedelic early 70s,
like every
late
kind
60s,
of psychedelic stuff you want to see. And then but after like seeing that counterpoint to what I remember seeing in the 80s of them like just exploding on a
cages.
stage and just sweat everywhere and like
fire,
the artful black and white video for Wind of Change or whatever. But
Still Loving You, I think, was black and white as well.
Because that
my favorite video was the Alcatraz video for No One But You. Like that's great, because they even make the one guy, Rudolph, even gets into like the pose with the forks over his eyes and stuff, and it's one of my favorite. I kind of miss. I can't find it. I don't think I switched cable companies. I have DirecTV, and I can't find VH1 Classic, but they used to do Metal Mania or whatever, and that was a video. They was in pretty heavy rotation, so I'd catch that from time to time. But no, I get you. It's probably one like I listen to the least now, especially that I've kind of really discovered the Uli stuff. But I guess I probably would listen to that record more than some of like their later 80s, early 90s stuff.
Oh sure, yeah. I'm talking like Love It First Sting's my cutoff. Really, I don't listen to much of the other stuff.
The one right after that's okay. Savage Amusement also has like a couple like okay I like those hit songs. Like Rhythm of Love is like a competent. It's just like it's not something I want to listen to a lot. But,
I just like those albums.
I don't think they hold up as like a whole piece, but there's a couple songs here and there that are
like those are so tempered by like it has this unbelievable hit, and then everything else is kind of like disappointing. These have so many more enjoyable moments for me on them, like the discoverable moments.
There's a lot of texture to all these songs and a lot of personality and things, so. But, as we kind of talked about in part one, Virgin Killers was such a controversial record from, the standpoint of the album cover and things like that. But production-wise, and you can hear it in a song like Catch Your Train, this is much more direct, kind of in your face. I think we even mentioned it had kind of almost like a Rick Rubin-like production where he's putting it like right up there. Whereas like In Trance was a little more esoteric with some of the things that were sort of going on. Oh, for sure. It was
the recording is of its time. Like almost like old school of the, like, he probably had like I don't know who produced the thing, but it seems like a long-term veteran. Did that. He knew all the studio tricks, but not just upping the volume.
And I think to me, Virgin Killers is one of the first like Scorpions record that's like electric and sharp sounding, like a lot of their 80s stuff where it's like precision. It's very precise and stuff. And I have a feeling that I'm sure as they start moving in that direction, and Catch Your Train is sort of like a obvious like ode to like the 80s, and we'll kind of talk about that in a second, but I think that's where maybe Roth starts to realize he might be the odd man out in terms of like the direction the band might be starting to head, and he's only got a few more kind of like attempts to sort of
if he wants to continue being a songwriter.
If he wants to sort of have a say, they're moving in a more I don't want to say simplified direction, because there's still some complexity to their songs, obviously, but there's not going to be like the 7 or 8 minute long explorations of stuff. That's not what they're kind of about.
No, they did that stuff incredibly well, but I think, as you mature in any kind of art form, I think, me personally, I respect simplicity when it's done really well. It's something that if you've got like 50 notes, but you can get rid of half of that and make something really compelling. Some people, it's a hard thing to do. That's why the older I get, the more I think I respect Rudolf Schenker as a kind of like a guiding force for the band and a songwriter, that you can write that many real fucking catchy songs.
Yeah.
Is kind of insane to me.
Well, we're kind of comparing him to like Roth as like, Hetfield to Hammett or something.
Yeah.
Although I think Roth is infinitely better than Hammett and had some good songwriting credits. Sure. But so often, if your band, Catch Your Train, to kind of get back to where it is, you start to hear these shred elements on it. You start to hear Joe Satriani and, there's a Marty Friedman part, like right around the 2-minute mark that just like hits it. There's some George Lynchism. I'm sure like Randy Rhoads kind of, just got some things from this. You can definitely hear like
stuff.
What's that?
The Daniel Kavanaugh.
Yeah, there's even a little bit of that too. But there's definitely a shred element before that was like a genre. With Steve Vai and Satriani and those guys. And one of the issues I think Mark and I are kind of debating about like a guy like Steve Vai or Satriani is they're so talented, but their songwriting craft is not like up to par in terms of writing a song that's like concise or that like people really want to listen to.
Yeah.
Unless you're like a guitar tech person or a guitar teacher, or it's
most people don't understand how difficult certain things are to play, and I think that really pigeonholes you for the level of success you can get to. I think we talked about this off mic, but that I don't know of any great film or comic book or novels are their own thing. I can't really talk to that, but when you have everything at your fingertips, it's really hard to make good decisions. When you have like desperation, you make really interesting choices. It's
why, like, if you're not like broken hearted and run down, you can't write like great love songs. Like you almost have to have experienced or gone through like the shit, and that's why so many rock stars and just great artists in general, painters, etc., like I kind of have like tragic lives. It's like they're channeling that like creatively into something that's not.
It's trying to show some like your innermost feelings in a visual style or musical style, but that's like somebody's telling you their worst fears or their like
it's an intimacy.
Yeah, so there's definitely like a vulnerability there, and it takes a certain kind of person that can do that.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to sort of tap into, and it makes some people kind of uncomfortable to sort of go to that place. That's why I think you're afflicted, like people like Johnny Cash or like Hank Williams Sr. or even going back to Robert Johnson and just the fears and anxieties he had all the way up through your Jeff Buckleys and those kind of people, like even like the stuff Jonas was singing about like with Catatonia on Last Fair Deal Gone Down, like clearly he was at this sort of like crossroads of his life, and there was some authenticity to the pain of some of the songs.
I think that's the key, is the authenticity and honesty to it. You can tell when something's done for the wrong reason.
Yeah, and I think that's when you get like the Berklee School of Music type kids coming out who are so virtuoso in all of their instruments. Like a lot of those guys don't pan out for me. Like they become part of bands that are very mechanical and lack some of that kind of emotional stuff. You know?
That's that's why I don't like Dream Theater doesn't do anything for me. Why certain smooth jazz doesn't do anything for me.
For sure, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of that stuff that just doesn't. And I think it comes down, and that's probably my biggest overarching thing of anything that I enjoy, is does it have authenticity to it?
Yep.
Is it being honest for even if it's a stupid gory horror movie, is it doing it for X, Y, and Z reasons that seem honest to me?
And I talk about that in my rock history class a lot. Like I tell them that the definition of the term blues is that it delivers truth. And so the most important takeaway from the blues isn't like, whether or not these songs sound like, like black dudes from Mississippi in their like 40s, who are like, but is it like delivering truth? Is it something authentic and truthful and some emotional thing that's sort of coming out of it? And that's the gift that the blues sort of gave to rock and roll on some level.
I did, I don't get to talk about college very often, but I had to take a speech class, and I did a counterpoint of Blues Hammer from Ghost World.
Ghost World, hell yeah.
And then had a Son House song as well as another thing. And I got creative by using that kind of stuff so I didn't have to talk quite as much.
Yeah.
But also just showing the absolute complete utter difference between those two people.
Yeah. And if you're not familiar with Blues Hammer, it was sort of a white appropriation of blues. It was kind of like a commentary on kind of your... right
before they had like basically a Son House type character opening up for Blues Hammer, and Steve Buscemi comes in and like talks to some chick that, if you want down home Delta blues, then you got to listen to Blues Hammer.
Yeah, I got the cotton picking blues. Yeah, it's just
and it looks like a bunch of frat guys.
Yeah, frat guys doing blues. You know,
I've been picking cotton. Like, oh my god,
that movie had so much great commentary on like us as college students and us working at a record store and the kind of clientele that we saw walk in. There's that great moment where the two girls, the two leads in Ghost World, are kind of having, they're in the cafeteria, and this group of guys walk by and say, "Hey guys, you want to have a reggae party tonight or what?" And like, I just remember like the frat guys who would come in and like, we just discovered Bob Marley and Dave Matthews Band, and you'd be like, cool. Like, and I love Bob Marley today, like I do, but I had to get away from maybe my prejudgments of like whatever I took away and discover Bob Marley on my own or whatever. But it is kind of funny, you know, and that's why, like, when you get back to like a guy like Uli John Roth, the thing that I think I love about him is he's taken the virtuoso-ness, but he also has like the soul and authenticity of a Hendrix, because Hendrix was his muse in a way, you know, that he sort of used.
He has all that power, but he knows how to wield it in a way that's compelling.
Yeah.
Like sometimes he'll do the Marty Friedman, or I think it's
Friedman, I think, yeah.
I'd said it too wrong for too many years, but you know, he can do just that total shred thing, or he can just hold a note for 15 seconds and just like bend the neck a little bit, and it just he had an absolute and complete mastery of the guitar, but also had enough common sense and heart to be able to do what was right, you know.
And the thing that Mark's just kind of talking about is kind of the last song we're going to hear from Virgin Killers, which is a kind of more ballad. I would say it's one of the more poignant, somber ballads that Roth was ever sort of part of. And he wrote this, and it's a song called Yellow Raven. And I kind of wrote that it's him kind of at his most delicate. And you can almost hear there's some doomier elements, especially near the end. He kind of like takes it into a more like kind of a Sabbath-y sort of area, but
especially the guitar tone is amazing.
But then like early on, just how somber it is, you can hear some of those elements in like, you know, like doom stuff. I think you mentioned Candlemass and Anathema, where kind of you can hear where like that level of, you know, I just never, outside of Sabbath, which was obviously very depressing and doomy, you didn't hear much like this, I think, in the mid 70s, you know.
And I never thought Sabbath never came across depressing to me.
Outside of like a few, like Solitude, you know, for Master Reality is a pretty like,
but it always felt
song,
like it like transported
Planet
me more.
Caravan, I think, has like a more of that sort of etherealness to it.
Yeah, but it never, like Klaus's vocals. He's like like a raw nerve.
He's real. Like that's why I love Scorpion ballads almost more than a lot of other 80s hair metal ballads. Like Still Loving You is fucking like,
it's great.
Painful.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I mean I don't know. His voice is just. It's another one of those things. He's not a great singer, but what he does with his faculties is amazing.
Yeah.
It's like perfectly suited to this band.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. So we're gonna get into Yellow Raven to sort of end things, and then you're going to hear a pair of songs from Taken by Force, and we'll talk a little bit more about that record when we come back. But the songs you're going to hear, Riot of Your Times, kind of has this great kind of Who Pinball Wizard sort of opening. It got some cool like sweeping kind of
acoustic guitar
type kind of thing. But it also has this like real apocalyptic sort of dark vibe to it. And the only song, and as you're hearing it, you know, see if you're familiar with the Led Zeppelin song "Achilles' Last Stand" from Presence. It has very much that sort of apocalyptic, epic kind of vibe to it. That's very cool.
Thin Lizzy driving.
Yeah, for sure. So, and then we'll end with "We'll Burn the Sky," which we have a lot to say about that song. So here's "Yellow Raven" from Virgin Killers, and then we have "The Riot of Your Time" from Taken by Force, and "We'll Burn the Sky."
rain. The yellow raven sip the air, gentle eyes kissing the rain. Where do you go, fantastic dream bird? Take me away to somewhere, take me away from here. Where do you go, fantastic dream bird? Answer to my yearning, take me away from here. Firebird begin to cry, and the music died away. The firebird began to cry, and smoke was slowly drifting by. Where do you go, fantastic green bird? Take me away to somewhere, take me away from here. Where do you go, fantastic green bird? Answer to my yearning, take me away from here. Rock is gone, gone to heaven. Star on the way to the stars. And now the king of rock is born, 77. Born to be there when it starts. 94, 95, if the world is still alive, with the stars. child. I'm in love with the falling rain. Everything seems to call your name. Yesterday you were leaving life and all the pain. Everything wants you back again. Wants you back again. Wants you back again. My dreams recall us being one. I've searched for you to be free. A force of life you have always been. I feel blue since you've gone. Your breath of love surrounded me. When can I rejoin you to be free? Rejoin you to be free. Rejoin you to be free.
That was We'll Burn the Sky, The Riot of Your Time, and we started things off with the ballad Yellow Raven from Virgin Killers. As I told Mark, there's a lot to unpack, I think, with We'll Burn the Sky, but before we kind of get into that, I guess Taken by Force is the last record that will be featuring Uli, 1977. Well, the last studio record, my apologies. He's on Tokyo Tapes in 1978, even though I think a lot of the tour was from 77. I believe some of the a lot of the songs kind of were culled from that.
One of the best live records ever, next to Unleashed in the East. I mean, I'm saying live in air quotes too.
Pretty great. I think, Live and Dangerous from Thin Lizzy's kind of up there too. Live After Death from Maiden is pretty extraordinary, I think, for a metal record.
Yeah, there's not a ton of live stuff that, like, all those records that you just said, like, capture the essence of the band in a way that's...
For sure.
That's hard to...
And that's not, like, exhausting. I feel like, you get to... I don't know, like Metallica, Live Shit, Binge and Purge, like, that was, like, a lot of live stuff, but it wasn't cohesive. It was just, like, here's a lot of music that we did, like, 4 discs or something.
I mean, that's the problem. You get more money and more... Like, back in the day, you didn't want to do a double disc.
It's hard to edit yourself, yeah.
Yeah, like, but even as a double LP, Live After Death... It totally chronicles the entire career of the band.
It's a greatest hits record.
And it's a great performance. They played, what was it, 4 sold-out performances in L.A. or whatever that was recorded. It was like insane.
Yeah. So, and yeah, we'll get some Tokyo Tapes a little bit later. Does Tokyo Tales is Blind Guardian.
Yes.
Tokyo Tapes is Scorpions.
I'm sure that's
sometimes what they, German metal. Homage. We fuck it up with both. Yeah. But Taken by Force it's very eclectic, and this is my hot take. Decibel did their Hall of Fame as In Trance. I'm not really sure if you have a favorite of the Uli era.
I like the title track In Trance a lot. Okay. It's amazing.
For me, Taken by Force is my favorite Uli record.
Okay.
And it has to do with really 2 songs, and it's We'll Burn the Sky, which we just heard, and then The Sails of Charon. And we'll get to that, but those...
I would say mine would also be He's a Woman, She's a Man, just
because
it's fun to sing along to.
I mean, that's another reason why I like Taken by Force. Like, it's just, the hits just kind of keep rolling, and even some of the songs, Your Light is a fantastic song that we could have played, or I've Got to Be Free, which kind of has, which we are going to play. Sorry, there was another one I wrote down. I think it was Your Light was on the fence for sort of playing that we don't have time for, but... It's just it's kind of it's an odd collection to me. It's not as focused as a singular sort of thing as I think In Trance kind of had like a vision. I think Virgin Killers has like this sort of like economy to it.
It's got an album cohesiveness. This is more seems like I don't know.
To me you can tell Roth is kind of maybe doing his own. He's like kind of moving away, and he's just kind of whatever he's contributing. And I feel like the songwriting is like a little bit separated.
Yeah. It gets to that point in like a band's career when you have... That's why I guess Metallica's worked for so long, because Kurt Hammett is kind of like...
he doesn't try to write songs.
He's basically a hired gun.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't... I don't understand that kind of situation, because I would be the more dominant personality in that I would have a lot of things to say.
Yeah.
But I totally respect people that they're comfortable and happy being that person, but I would want to be the guy saying, no, that riff sucks, you got to do this.
Yeah. And maybe he's just got that personality where it doesn't, he trusts James because James has been there for so long,
Yeah.
But I don't know, it's an interesting record, and there's some people I've read, there's some people that hold this up as like the best thing of this era. There's a lot of people that also have like a lot of criticism for it because of maybe its incohesiveness a bit, that it doesn't have this kind of singular vision to it, but
it doesn't really need it, to be honest. I mean, it doesn't totally suffer for it. Yeah.
Steam Rock Fever is another song.
I love that song.
That's a really fun kind of tune as well.
Some of the best song titles come from having English as a second language. They come up with really interesting things.
Exactly. It's very strange, but Ride Your Time, like we kind of said before, has this sort of atmospheric kind of climatic sort of build in it with a sort of Pinball Wizard Who riffing and stuff. But then when you get to We'll Burn the Sky, this is a song like I've heard for years and didn't know the backstory of it, and then kind of stumbled down the rabbit hole one day, kind of poking around and looking, because I think I noticed the songwriting credit had this name that was not any other songwriting credit, and that's Monica Dannemann.
Oh, it was somebody's girlfriend, wasn't it?
It's Uli's girlfriend, that's and right. Uli and Dannemann wrote the lyrics to the song as a poem, and it was a poem about Jimi Hendrix because Monica Dannemann was Hendrix's girlfriend, and she was actually with him the night he OD'd.
Oh, sure.
Well, he didn't really OD. He died of alcohol poisoning, but the night he died. And in fact, she gave one of Hendrix's guitars to Uli, is the story. And so Uli has one of Hendrix's like original guitars, one of like the ones he didn't destroy and stuff like that. That's pretty famous. And there's like controversy about whether Uli should give it back because now like they're broken up, but they were together for like 20 plus years or something like that. Or is that something that should be given to like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Hendrix didn't give it to Uli, so again, I'm not weighing in. Uli to me is a competent enough player that he deserves to.
That's the equivalent of like passing a sword from your house to somebody else because you feel they're worthy or valid to use it.
And should a Hendrix guitar be in a museum where no one gets to play it, or is it cool that maybe Uli has done maybe some recordings with it and is continuing to use the instrument for what probably a guy like Hendrix would want it to be used for anyways, rather than be behind closed glass and not to be used for what its purpose is.
You could put a replica in there, and but carry on with how short his musical career was, the longevity and the scope and effect he had on other people. Why not let it keep going?
I agree. So I've got no problems with it, but it's sort of there. And from a musical standpoint, to me, it's like got this kind of. It's almost like a template for like the dynamicism of like the No One Like You type songs of the future. Uli and Schenker back and forth. It's probably some of the most like kind of sensitive, greatest guitar dynamics I've heard on the Scorpions to this point. Some of the stuff Uli's doing like near the end, especially like feels like All Along the Watchtower and Voodoo Child, where like those songs have like these kind of like this like sonic soloing at the end where it just almost like fades into like nothingness. Like the songs almost fade the solos out before they're done because these are kind of the type of solos that would just like bleed forever. They just like, it's like this blended note aspect. What's the other song? Little Wing from Hendrix does that as well. Like he opens up the solo and then it just sort of floats away. And I kind of talk to my kids when we listen to it in class. I'm like, it's almost like the solo exists forever, but you're just catching it for like 2 minutes and then it just goes away. And like the kids are like, Comet, man. Whoa, man. They're kind of blown away or whatever. But
also using like pretty simple background rhythms and then this like accent
and that's what I mean. Like it's got like the dynamic songwriting quality of that like sets the template for like the No One Like You, which is such a simple, punchy, great, but like. So it's got all that, but then there's these textures that Roth is just throwing over. And if his girlfriend is writing this poem about Hendrix, to me, this is him doing his most like Hendrix, almost like blending it in. I think he kind of went all in on a song like this and said like, if it's going to be an ode to Hendrix, let me like make it about Hendrix. But instead of it being kind of a noodle fest, which you could be tempted to do if you're trying to tribute to Hendrix, it still has, because I think Schenker co-wrote it, and Klaus kind of helped co-write it too, it's got that structure that is exactly what like a guy like Hetfield or Schenker like provides. You know what I'm saying? So it's got like the foundation and the house built, and he's accenting, he's making the inside of the house like abstract and beautiful. You know what I mean? But yet there's still
a solid structure. Yeah, it's like a brick building with like an unbelievable painting.
Unbelievable stuff.
Murals
and so to me, like Wilbur in the Sky, to me that's why it's my favorite Scorpion song, because it's like the ultimate meeting of these two worlds, the 80s world, which is more commercial, and kind of the artsy, experimental, Hendrix-driven world that Roth represented in the 70s. You know what I mean?
It still represents now.
Yeah. It's the perfect crossroads to that sort of stuff. So that's what I think is so fascinating about it. So if you're a fan of Hendrix, go back, listen to that again through the scope of Hendrix. If you're not familiar with it, listen to the lyrics and some of that kind of stuff, because like I said, it is a poem about him, and it's a pretty cool stuff. So, and now we're going to sort of shift into, I think, what most people consider the quintessential song probably of the Uli era, which is the Sails of Charon. I've heard a lot, I've read a lot, and seen in a lot of like commentary where people will refer to this song in the way that they talk about like Victim of Changes from Judas Priest, or just these sort of songs that like represent like a line in the sand that's like a musical evolution kind of forward. To me, this is like the song
the next 10 years of their career.
You could make the argument this is like their first metal song.
Yeah.
Like they're not writing like hard rock, blues rock. You know, Sabbath always framed itself as like a hard rock band, or, you know, they never called themselves like metal. Mm-hmm. You know, critics called them metal. Priest was the first band to really frame itself like metal. You know what I mean?
Self-actualize, or what do you call it? They would call themselves that.
Yeah, it was like they wore they waved the flag.
Everybody else was like, before that, but they definitely like unabashedly like, this is what we are, is heavy metal.
And to me, this is like
self-identifying.
Everything about this is sort of there. And songwriting wise, this is Roth, so it's interesting because I mean, like, this is his departure point. But this kind of like predicts, again, where the Scorpions are going to kind of go in a lot of ways. I wrote, it's a goddamn masterpiece. I said it's got this really kind of cool, funky, seductive, very sinister sort of riffing sort of pattern to it. And the solo's got this great like kind of sweet picking, diminished arpeggios to it. You know, it's very metallic. You know, and we've heard, you know, Catch Your Train, which we heard in the last set, very metallic as well, but this is one
Germans
of those.
Do it really good.
They do. You kind of mentioned that Accept is like the missing link between what this era of the Scorpions is doing and kind of like really the origins of thrash metal in a way. You know, didn't you say like they kind of remind you of like a really stripped down kind of efficient version of like this era of Scorpions kind of?
Yeah, and almost that oh Jesus, singer Udo,
yeah,
he's almost. Udo Uli, there's lots of weird names. He's almost like a caricature of Klaus Meine to some extent. Mm-hmm. Like Klaus Meine, and then dude from AC/DC.
Which one? Brian Johnson?
The original.
Bon Scott.
Bon Scott. That somehow made it acceptable to be able to not sing
the raspy,
the really raspy thing, and like even amped it up even more. But yeah, Germany really had something about the history and like the classical music background of a lot of this stuff, the Wagnerianism,
Teutonic kind of
the whole Teutonic thing. Like the thrash from Germany was always distinct, you know, with Creator and Destruction and Sodom it was completely different than everything else. Yeah. But there's that straight trajectory. I don't know where it ends. It seemed to like end at Halloween and then became power metal. Like they dropped a lot of that shit and it went away.
It's interesting because we're gonna hear He's a Woman, She's a Man, and I gotta believe that, you know, that song really reminds me. I mentioned that Sails of Sharon is like the Victim of Changes kind of for the Scorpions. That song He's a Woman, She's a Man, the way it drives, it's like their Exciter. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like, to me, that's like the beginning of like that kind of driving 80s kind of thing. And you got to believe that Halloween and Blind Guardian and those speed metal German bands were really like they had an ear
that's what they grabbed
to what He's a Woman. Like, wow, like you know, like they're like, oh, that's the thing right there. And Accept, I'm sure, heard He's a Woman and were like, holy shit, that's our career. You know, fast, punchy, simple.
Yeah.
And He's a
Priest
Woman
did the same thing.
He's a Woman, She's a Man compared to like We'll Burn the Sky or Sails of Sharon is like just
I feel
precise.
That like the Priest and Scorpions are almost like kindred spirits in their trajectory.
Yeah.
Like they figured out, you know, with British Steel how to, or even my mind's not working as good as it should. Killing Machine.
Yeah.
Like how to, like economy and how effective that could be. You could still be super heavy, but just by like taking almost like pop sensibilities, you could, I mean, that blew up their career.
Yeah, you can make the argument that Taken by Force kind of is the same type of thing that like Stained Class is.
Yeah.
Stained Class was the last kind of Priest record with, you know, like 6, 7, 8 minute long songs, like epic, you know, things. Mm-hmm. And then you get to the like the economy of Killing Machine and British Steel. It kind of represented like precision, and then you get
point of entry. I mean, it's just refine,
refine, and that's like what you're gonna get with Love at First Sting and Love Drive and Blackout and those kind of Savage Amusement. No, Savage Amusement is much later. What's the other one I'm thinking of?
Animal Magnetism.
Animal Magnetism. Yeah, that's the one I'm leaving out.
One of my favorite covers ever.
Such a great cover. And
it tells such a story.
And at a certain point down the road, we should probably do a show on those like 4 early 80s, late 70s post-Uli records.
Sure.
It'd be kind of fun. I think even Wagner said he'd be into talking about some of that stuff because he kind of has like a
I have more of an appreciation for it now than
certainly
I ever
I
did,
do too.
So.
Yeah, I realized I really liked the Scorpions when I was a kid. I just didn't. They didn't have the same image that like Motley Crue and Poison and shit had. So I don't know, they didn't like appeal to me in that level of like fun. They seem more like serious about shit. But now like I love.
They weren't hard partying.
Yeah. Well, they probably were, but
like, they didn't. That wasn't their image, like Def Leppard or something. Like
yes, exactly.
We're not going to get blowjobs
even though they
from
did
moms
have
and daughters
women in
at the same
cages.
time.
Let's not forget.
Yes, but there's
something about partying and women in cages. That
some
goes
subtlety
hand
to
in
it.
hand. Yeah. So, but for sure, that's yeah. I don't even know how we got on that tangent, but I definitely agree with kind of some of the things you're saying there. So, but we've got Sails of Charon, and then I've Got to Be Free, which is it kind of has like a Hendrix meets Van Halen vibe. I wrote with a little bit kind of Thin Lizzy and Robin Trower. It's got that dun, 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 like a crosstown traffic kind of like loopy. I don't even have the terminology to describe some of the shit Hendrix would do with guitar, but if you know Hendrix, you're going to hear it right away and be like, oh, okay, I know why Roth worshipped kind of Hendrix. And then we're going to come out with He's a Woman, She's a Man, which comes from this record. And, I've already mentioned that it's got this kind of great sonic immediacy, like kind of how Exciter did for Priest. Very forward thinking. It has very much the verse-chorus pattern that the Scorpions are going to take from this point on. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's like, Woodburn in the Sky has like kind of more experimentalness to it. Sails of Charon has a little bit of that, but it still like has a little bit of that jazz kind of like krautrock. There's still like a little bit of that like artsy stuff, going on those songs. And to me, He's a Woman, She's a Man is just straightforward rock, like hard rock kind of stuff. And it's kind of interesting. This, along with Bowie, Rebel Rebel, and Lola from the Kinks. You didn't get a lot of great songs about like transgender studies in the 70s, but hey, the Scorpions always cutting edge with their sexual politics. All you have to do is look at their album covers to know that they were way cutting edge with progressive values.
Yeah, especially Magnetism.
Yeah. So I don't know what compelled them to write a song like this. Maybe they got into glam rock for a while and just thought it was a funny way of it's catchy.
It tells a story.
Yeah, it's certainly a story. Certainly a story. But we're going to play the version from the Live at Tokyo tapes. And then we're going to end with something kind of a little bit different for a lot of Scorpions people. They might not know about this record. And it's a song called Electric Sun from an album called Earthquake. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we come back. So enjoy Sails of Charon, I've Got to Be Free, He's a Woman, She's a Man, Electric Sun.
taught to be wise. No child from widest landscapes. Don't follow the wrong song. There is only one song. Peace, child, from nothing but love. Don't let yourself down now. We still have to stop. Stop, child, from paradise gardens. You'll be our leader all through the night. Oh, we'll be so sad. I think we're gonna go mad. But then we'll be free. Forever again, we'll be free.
That was Electric Sun from Uli Jon Roth's Earthquake. Then we had He's a Woman, She's a Man from Tokyo Tapes. And I've Got to Be Free in the Sails of Charon from Taken by Force. And I forgot to mention Charon. That's kind of a cool little...
Is that a moon of Saturn?
It is, but it's also in Greek mythology. It's the guy who like kind of takes you across the river Styx into hell, their hell dimension. He was like not a demon, but like kind of like... Charon was the guy like on the ship that would sail you across the river Styx.
Do you have another name too?
Perhaps, maybe in Roman culture, because the Romans would appropriate, a lot of Greek kind of mythology kind of stuff.
I'm just thinking of a lot of like black metal titles and stuff too. It sounds to fall.
Probably something. It's cool. Like from an art perspective, there's a cool Michelangelo painting called The Last Judgment, and in the corner of it, it's basically like heaven, heaven, purgatory, which is kind of like earth in the center of the painting, and then hell in the bottom. And in the bottom corner, you have Charon, and he's holding like a paddle, like, in a rowboat across. He's like got this demonic kind of looking thing to him. But one of the cool things Michelangelo did in the corner of that painting is there's a dude who has like these like devil horn kind of things on him, and he's naked, and he's got a giant python wrapped around him, and the python's mouth is right on his junk. And it was a cardinal that wanted to cover up all of the nude spots and censor a lot of Michelangelo and not pay him what he deserved. So Michelangelo painted him in that, basically burning in hell with a snake just biting his junk as like a giant FU against him. It's pretty sweet. I kind of show my kids that when we study the Renaissance, and they're pretty... I kind of explain them.
Charon was the ferryman of Hades. Mm-hmm. And then also Cross River Styx, which is also a band.
Yeah.
And Acheron, which is also a black metal band.
Yeah. Oh, Acheron? Yeah.
Or
Acheron.
However, it's like Celtic,
Acheron,
Celtic, however you want to... It's the Americanized version of it.
We once ate pizza with Acheron at Giuseppe's Pizza in Milwaukee after they were like at the next table and talking to us. I think I was Facebook friends with one of the guys from Acheron on our Facebook for our podcast, and he posts some pretty crazy stuff. So I think I might have. I don't know if I silenced him, but I was like, whoa, there's some pretty weird stuff he's talking about.
There's some old death metal legends I've befriended, then unfollowed, but stay friends because of things.
Yeah,
but
they get they're a little crotchety sometimes about things. That's what Facebook's for, I guess. But so the song we just heard there, Electric Sun, Earthquake. Electric Sun from the album Earthquake. That's where Uli goes solo, and that's a 3-piece, which is impressive. And he's singing and he's playing guitar, and it's just...
I remember hating the singing at first, but it doesn't really bother me at all right now.
Like, I heard this like 10, 15 years ago and was like, it doesn't sound like Klaus, like there's something off about it. But now I can look past some of the deficiencies in singing, which they're not that big, but like it's... The guitar playing is just off the charts. It's phenomenal, And this is what he did, and it came out in 1979, so 2 years after Taken by Force, 1 year after Tokyo Tapes, and he'll do, I think, 2 solo records under this kind of like Uli Jon Roth trio, and then he kind of goes and does various things throughout the next 20, 30 years. He's actually gone back and done like a Uli John Roth double album of some of these Scorpion songs that we listen to, and I think you can get them from his website. I'm not sure if you can buy them on iTunes, but I listen to some of them, and they're updated versions of some of these Scorpion songs, and they're nice. I mean, because he's obviously continued to push himself as a musician, so he didn't get like rusty and stuff. So
I've seen him a couple times, very, very long performances, but mostly he was doing a lot of, basically the first half of the set, Scorpions songs, and the second half would be
some of their stuff,
other solo stuff.
And he's done lots and lots of solo stuff, and I don't know how easily it is to acquire these records. I'm sure you can find all of it on YouTube now,
or something, yeah.
But in terms of actually like buying physical copies, I think it can be a little bit tougher. But
he did one in '85 called Beyond the Astral Skies. That was on EMI.
Is it under Uli John Roth solo?
No, this is Electric Sun.
Is Electric Sun? Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
But because the other ones are on like Brain Metronome. It's like a German label. So.
Yeah.
Who knows? You can probably get the CDs on Discogs for $40.
Yeah, something like that. I'm sure the vinyl's just like kind of off the charts,
Mm-hmm.
But this is something like Chris, who does a lot of the Hall of Fames for Decibel and was most recently with us on the Dima Borger show. He kind of exposed me to this, and I'm not sure if Mike Johnson was into this stuff as much. He might have showed us this, but I know it was Chris that was the first one who exposed me to some of the Electric Sun stuff. Mm-hmm. So the cover's really awesome. I think it's kind of nifty. So.
Yeah.
But we're going to kind of close things off with another song, and it's the title track from this debut from Uli, and I think gives you sort of a final statement if you're still on the fence about his guitar skills and some of that. Like, it's pretty hard to kind of walk away from this instrumental, which is over the 10-minute mark. and
which we'll be playing probably as we're talking right now.
Yeah. And great intro, epic kind of 2 minutes of sort of noise. Reminds me a little bit of the opening to In Rock from Deep Purple, which had like Richie Blackmore just kind of like just showing off all these kind of noisy avenues and stuff, very abstract kind of stuff. I wrote down it's kind of like a meeting of like the Teutonic classical like German metal worlds and like Maggot Brain from Funkadelic, which was kind of Eddie Hazel being able to go off and just do these like cosmic soloing for 9-10 minutes long. It's obviously got a lot of the Hendrix qualities in there, and there's this it's multiple parts. It's kind of like a classical piece, and a very cool way to sort of put a final statement on the qualities that he had. So hopefully you enjoy Earthquake, the title track from Uli. But let us know what you thought. Shoot us an email at requiempodcast@gmail.com. Leave us a comment on Facebook. We always appreciate getting some ratings if you'd like to do that on iTunes. Talk to us on Facebook, Mark and Jason, or on Twitter at Podcast Requiem. Or you can also check us out at www.patreon.com/Requiem Metal if you'd like to donate to the show.
Requiem Podcast.
Requiem Podcast. Jeez, sorry about that. Thank you. Good thing you're here. Yeah. So if you just search for Requiem Podcast, we come up and stuff. And so we have some nice benefits that we talked about in a previous episode for some of the Patreons. We're trying to get some things to collect it and ready for that. We've got some old Eclipse issues and Requiem issues that we're sort of sending out, and a lot of other fun little items, and hopefully get you into the conversation on some of the future shows, which would be cool. So kind of make it a little more democratic from that standpoint. So anything else, Mark?
That's it, man.
That's it. All right. So for Earthquake and Uli Jean Roth and the era of the Scorpions, I'm Jason.
And I'm Mark.